นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังกุณุตรังอุปัจจายังนัมมาสามิ So the last sort of long solo tudong walk for me was 8 years ago now, to celebrate my 60th birthday. They don't let me go by myself anymore. And I walked from Bodh Gaya to Kusinara. It's about 400 kilometers, maybe something like that. And very cold at night. And so I don't have there's an umbrella, and just sleeping in empty buildings, or favorite sleeping places, haystacks, as you can bring some of the hay down and just climb inside, and so you're invisible and warm, and it's very pleasant. Well, one morning I was walking into a small town. It's very cold, shivering, and it was and there were this group of men who'd lit a fire, and they were squatting down on their haunches, or holding, warming themselves. And then they caught sight of me, and they all looked at me, and I realized they were Muslims. And there's a Muslim hat, and the Muslim clothes, and the Muslim beard without the mustache, and looking at me like this. And so I just walked along and thinking probably be okay. And then they shouted out at me. And so it's kind of like half sign language, half international language. It said, "You look cold. Come and sit by our fire." So I squatted down in the middle of this Muslim gentleman, and they looked at me, and they said, and one of them spoke a little bit of English, and they said, "You hungry?" I said, "Yeah, do you like Muslim food?" And I said, "Well, I don't eat meat yet." No problem. We find you some good Muslim food, no meat. And one of them went off, came back with some bread and some vegetable, something. And so I just sat there squatting in the dust by the side of a fire with this Muslim gentleman, dipping my roti into my dal and a cup of tea. It was cold, but I wasn't shivering anymore because I was in the fire. oh, life doesn't get better than this. It's like, yeah, this is what it's all about. And goodness and kindness, it's universal, isn't it? And it's so easily overlooked, and I'm like most people, see somebody with, dressed in a traditional Muslim way, sort of looking at you, and you're imagining, it's sort of a hostile look, or what are they making of me? And all they saw was, a cold human being who would appreciate a place by the fire. And this, in practice of Dhamma, this appreciation of goodness is such a uplifting and always available kind of feature of our life as Buddhists. I remember there's I think, unless you're of my generation, you probably won't know this writer, because he died some time ago, and he's called Gore Vidal. Has anyone heard of Gore Vidal? And Gore Vidal said once, he said, every time I hear of the success of a friend, something inside me dies. And that's the way he used to talk and write. He's sort of almost reconciles you to wrong speech. He's that witty and clever, but there is that side as well. So being sensitive to and appreciative of goodness is not the sort of Pollyanna trying to, it's not positive thinking and sort of turning your eyes away from the unkindness and the cruelty and the truth that we do have these kinds of feelings. We don't want to own them often, do we? And it's shocking. I think most people have had that. Almost everybody. It's just a completely inappropriate kind of emotion, and you would say that's not who I am. That's not who I really am. But someone you love, and someone you care for, and someone that you would make and do make sacrifices for. But you hear some misfortune, and something in you rejoices. You hear that they have some success, and something within you dies or feels unhappy. And that's the human mind. It contains multitudes. It contains things like that, nasty things and cruelties there, and obscene thoughts are there. It's like you have an open room, and any kind of living creature can walk into the room, and it's not a fault of the room. It's just the nature of the space. And so, what is the mistake we make is we take it personally, to use Lumpur Sumedho's thing. It's if people knew, if people knew that thought, if people knew I felt that, or I thought that, nobody would have anything to do with me. So I'm just such a bad person. I'm a fake. These are all things you're adding on unnecessarily. And it's a kind of like a fake kind of partial anatta. It's like, this is not who I really am. This is when people are caught doing inappropriate things. They say, this is not who I am. but when they say that, deep down they think they are. And this practice of Dhamma is looking again and again and seeing the conditioned nature. So it's not taking a stance or an attitude or now I'm a Buddhist, I believe in anatta or something like that. It's looking and just seeing how the unenlightened mind includes every kind of cruelty and evil. And so what's the point? Well, I think a story I've mentioned before when I was an anagarika in England and Luang Por Sumedho came to breakfast one day, or I think it was breakfast, and he was saying, maybe it was lunch, and he was saying that this woman had been on the phone talking to him, and she'd been completely distraught. And I'm a monster. She said, why? Well, because she was a new mother, and she was completely stressed out and at her wit's end looking after the child, and she wasn't getting support from her husband, and at her wit's end. And the thought came, she just like to kill her child. Why don't you just kind of drown it or kill it? And then when she realized the thought that came into her head, she was so horrified, that the only thing she could think to do was to phone the monastery and ask to speak to Luang Por Sumedho. And so she was crying and sobbing and said, what does this say about me? I'm a monster. What a kind of mother. I don't deserve to be a mother of a child. And Luang Por Sumedho said, so did you? Did you drown your child? Did you? No. How could you think I would do such a thing? Well, exactly. Yeah. So this is the fact that there can be any kind of thought. If you just as if you've got in English, you've got 26 letters, you can make every single word in the English language without exception. If you've got a mind, a human mind, you can make every kind of possible thought, every kind of possible emotion. But do you act upon it? So this is where we find our refuge. Yes, you can think those things, but you wouldn't dream of acting upon them. And that's a really the crucial distinction, isn't it? So we can't control what's in our minds, but if we recognize that some thoughts and some emotions are founded on wrong thinking or misunderstandings or wrong assumptions, then we gradually work away at the roots, and then the thoughts, the emotions which are based upon those are undermined and fade away. So with sila, for the ordinary practitioner, it's a matter of restraint. You have a volition to transgress, to harm somebody or something through body and speech, to take what's not given, and so on. And you don't do that. That's human superpower, isn't it? You want to do something, but you don't do it. It's incredible. It's not a small thing. But when someone has fully cultivated the sila, and on the level of the stream enterer and someone who's of a higher level, then the volition doesn't arise anymore. Because the root of the volition has been abandoned. So the thoughts and the emotions, and these are vipaka, these are the results of karma we've created in the past because of things that we have given importance to, that we've either liked very much or disliked very much. And that leaves a trace in the mind. And when the conditions are ripe, then the results of those volitions will appear. But when we realize it's just that, it's nothing more. It's nothing to be proud of, it's nothing to be disgusted or horrified by. It's just noise in your head. And so with meditation, you're becoming aware of context and the space around things. When without that meditative dimension, we're so caught up in the foreground. You know, what's coming at you like this, and we can't see the space around it. And meditation with mindfulness practice, with sati and sampajanya and atapi, you begin to see spaces, and things arise within a space, and they pass away into space, and the mind is more inclined towards the space than the movement within the space. So these are changes that you can see take place, but the way in which we make mine, and in Pali language there's words ahankara and mamankara. It's like I making, me making. So you are creating samsara moment by moment. And when as soon as there's a thought of I or mine and an ownership or a sense of this solid being there, independent, self-existent, then you've created your samsara. So a lot of religions, they have teaching, when did the world begin and when did everything start, and there are some millions and millions of Christians in America who still believe that the whole universe is only 5,000 years old, and people take the teachings in their holy books as their standard for this. But in Buddhism, we say it starts right now. If you create me, you create mine, you create everything else. It all arises simultaneously right now, and you don't have to do that. You see. So one of the ways people talk about Dhamma practice, or the purpose of Dhamma practice, is so you don't have to be reborn anymore. So it's this idea, there's this objective samsaric constellation, and you've been born into this again and again and again, and now you're not going to be born into it anymore. But I've never found that so inspiring, actually, and I don't look at it like that. I think I've been creating a samsara endlessly, and now I know how to stop creating that. Buddha's given me the tools and the means by which I can decide not to create samsara anymore and all the realms of existence. So the practice is one which is coming back to what's happening right now and developing the the skill and the resilience and the patience and the contentment to be with the present moment and to take it step by step. So I had such a good training in this before I became a monk. There's a time when I was traveling through Asia, and there were so many twists and turns. You know, I was hitchhiking through Afghanistan. You know, and standing in the middle of a desert, and then a pickup truck stops, and then you're standing in the back of a pickup truck, the only person without a rifle or bullets, and and people are looking at you like like the prey, and this and suddenly, and so I don't speak the language, and I don't know what's going on, and I just don't have any choice except just take it one step at a time. And in the middle of the desert, the jeep or the pickup truck stopped, and everybody piled off, and there was this big building, like a godang, like some kind of hangar, and they said, go inside, and went inside, and in the middle of this godang there was this really big guy. He was like the king, and he got this long hookah pipe, and everybody's looking at me. So this 18-year-old Western boy, and he said, go. And he says, sit down here. And so, so what do? You sit down. And, and he says, yeah. And so, what do you do? So and then like this, and everybody laughs, and then he says something, and then somebody goes off, and there's a fridge. Cannot believe there's a fridge. There's electricity in this goddamn, and it brings out one of these like generic colas, and give me a cola. And that's, if you've been traveling like that in the desert, that's like Amrit. It's like, very delicious. And then everybody's just kind of laughing and joking and friendly, and bring something out to eat, and then we get back into the pickup truck. We're off and on into the middle of the desert, and it's like every moment you just don't know what's going to happen. And I thought, this is the life. I got to Herat, which subsequently was destroyed by the Russians in the war, but at that time it was a historic city and very beautiful city, I found. And somebody, I can't remember now, it's so long ago, somebody gave me some money, and so everything is super cheap, but it was enough to spend a night in a cheap hotel. And there was enough left over to buy a bus ticket to the Irani border. And so I got up, and so this bus was leaving very early in the morning. And you had to give your passport to the owner of the hotel. And it was like 6 o'clock in the morning or something, and I managed to get up in time and go to get my passport. And the owner of the hotel had been smoking opium all night, and he was kind of unconscious, so I had to wake him up, and he wasn't so happy. And then he got the safe, and he looked through the passports, and he gave me my passport, and I ran. So I was going to miss this bus, and I didn't have any more money to catch another bus. and so this rickety old bus eventually got to the Afghani border, and it's a soldier. He's like my age, and his uniform is covered with patches. You know, his uniform looked like twice as old as he was, and covered with all these patches. It looked like he sewed these patches on himself, and he had a gun which was probably like from the Second World War. And he pointed his gun at me, and he said, "Passport." And so I got my passport out, and it wasn't my passport. So much of a rush, and this guy was completely doped, and he gave me the wrong passport. And so I said, "No, it's not me. This is somebody else's passport." And he's looking at me, and he's looking at the passport. He's looking at me, and then he arrested me, and I got imprisoned in this cell, in this windblown, crumbling fortress on the border between Afghanistan and Iran. And I didn't know what was going on. Nobody could speak English. And then after about half an hour, another soldier came and passport, and I gave him a passport, and he looks at me, and he looks at the passport, and he looks at me, so looked very gruff, and walked out. And this was repeated a few times until finally, some hours later, you know, I had nothing to eat or drink or anything. And an officer came, and he spoke some English. And so I told him my passport is in a safe in this hotel in Herat, and he got the phone number, and he phoned up, and they let me go. So I had to go all the way back to Herat and then get my passport. And by the time I got back to the border had closed. And so I spent the night huddled up under a tree in the middle of the desert. And I thought, this is the life. Yeah. I was just so into it, you know. I didn't care, you know. Some of it was heedlessness. You know, when you're young, you just think it's like Batman. You know, you've got to come back next week. You know, there's like nothing terminal is going to happen because you're the hero of the show. You know, so there's a little bit of that. But I wanted to test myself. I wanted to be in difficult situations and learn and so everything was like grist for the mill, and then crossed over onto the Irani side of and it's in the middle of a desert, you know. It's like you'd think it was some kind of like European art house movie scene, you know. It's like, I don't know if you've ever watched European art house movies, and so there was all these other kind of hippies and travelers at this time, and they just shut you in this room, and quite a big room, and there's sort of glass cases with exhibits of all the different ways people have tried to smuggle drugs into Iran. So you see like a boot and a heel, and you can see where the drugs were in the heel, and all this. And so there's nothing to do except wander around and look at these exhibits. And there are these Irani plainclothes policemen who are just watching the reactions of all the people to see whether or not they're smuggling drugs, and this is going to upset them or frighten them. I was standing there, and there was one guy next to me, and then suddenly this Irani guy came out, put his hand on his heart to see whether his heart was beating quickly. And so, yeah, this is the life. I thought, this is the life. So, yeah, I mean, I had so many different experiences. But I thought my conceit as a young person was that wisdom comes from experience. So the more experiences you have, and the more kind of wild experiences and extreme experiences, it's kind of like a shortcut to wisdom. And then but I met more and more people who'd been doing things like me and more extreme things even, and yet they didn't seem very wise to me. And so I changed my mind, and my conclusion was that experience leads to memory. Whether or not it leads to any wisdom depends on the individual and how you approach your life and the things that happen to you or the things that you make happen. And I was talking with someone about this yesterday. I got back eventually to England and got restless after a while, and I didn't have any money, and I wanted to prove to my father that I could make money if I wanted to. So I hitchhiked to Switzerland and worked on a farm. And I had one book with me, which is an anthology of Buddha's teaching. And there was just one sutta there, and where the Buddha says to his disciples, I will teach you, because I will teach you the all. What is the all? And it's forms and sounds and odors and tastes, physical sensations, mental phenomena. This is the all. And right then I just lost all kind of interest in traveling and going places and doing things and experiencing things, because I realized it's never going to exceed that. Wherever I could go around the world, I was thinking of going back to India again, and I thought, yeah, it's just more forms, more sounds, more odors, more tastes, more physical sensations, more ideas, more thinking. And so what? This was my final kind of, so what? What is the real purpose of that? So that's when I became much more focused in trying to find some path with heart, a path with meaning and purpose, and less kind of scattergun, looking for unusual and extreme experiences as a way of just kind of like a lemon, so to squeeze out the wisdom from the experience. And I realized it didn't really work like that. But my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, is a wonderful man, but very prejudiced, as many of his generation were. And I went to visit him after I got back to India and spent a few days with him. And he started speaking this very kind of prejudiced, racist way about Indian people. And I couldn't keep quiet. And I said, look, I just received so much kindness, goodness from people in India. It's not right, it's not true. And he was going, and I said, what about your doctor? And this was the thing, you see, his doctor was Indian, and he loved this doctor. He had nothing but good things to say about this doctor, and treated him for years and years. And so I said, well, what about, I can't remember his name now, what about Dr. Aziz or Dr. whoever he was? And he said, yeah, well, he's an exception. He's, he's not like the rest of them, And so that's the way that the biased, the racist, prejudiced mind works, isn't it? It's like the way of being able to accommodate your real life experiences which conflict with your beliefs by saying it's a special case. And we do that with ourselves when sometimes we act in unsuitable and unkind and foolish ways, and we think, oh, yeah, well, it's a special case. I'm not usually like this, but this is a special case. One of the things I did learn. I was always interested in why smart people do stupid things and why smart people have foolish ideas. And my conclusion here was that it's the first thought, any kind, no matter how rational you are and how intelligent you are, you have to start off with an unproven foundation. You can't prove it all before you start. So if you believe that there's a creator God and he had a son and he sacrificed himself for a son, and that's your foundation, and then you build upon that, and then it's like building an edifice, or if you're an engineer, every single thing that you build upon that, if you look at it in isolation, makes complete sense if the previous story is sound. And in the edifice itself, you can't see necessarily any fallacies and any wrong thinking or so, but it's because the initial foundation is, if I view, incorrect. Or if you take very common example is like the end justifies the means. Okay, so this is once you take that as your starting point, then this isn't correct. It's maybe harmful to, but the end is so noble, and it's so right. Like this. I don't want to bring the world into your into the retreat so much, but there's this war with America and Iran at the moment, and part of it is that there are a number of people in America and people in the armed forces and in positions of power who believe that the only way that Jesus is coming back to the world, the second coming, is if there is a complete Armageddon in the Middle East. And so war and complete and utter destruction in the Middle East is the necessary price to pay for the second coming of the Messiah. This is not a kind of a fringe belief. Many people in positions of power believe this. So once you have this kind of idea and you take that as you can be, this makes sense as long as that makes sense. But if that doesn't make sense, then everything else can seem to anybody else as really deluded. And this is why the Buddha puts so much importance on right view. And right view is the first element of the Eightfold Path, as you know. And only when right view is established will right intention and right thinking, right action, and so on and so forth take place. And the conviction and the faith in action and its results in karma is the heart of right view. Things happen not because of some supernatural force or God or blessing or curse or punishment or test, but they occur according to causes and conditions. So Buddhist practice is examining causality, not as a philosophical concept, but looking at your body and your mind. This is, you can see everything here. You want to study human psychology, look at your mind. You'll see every possible emotion and thought. As I said before, it's like an open house. And so the more you look at your mind, the more you understand your mind, it becomes your understanding the human mind. And the more you understand how your mind works, the more you understand how other people's minds work, because there's no difference. So the kind of things that make you greedy or excite you or interest you or appall you or disgust you will vary from other people, but those emotions are the same. And are the same as the emotions felt by human beings 5,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, every country of the world. So looking at the mind, we're beginning to see mental states as mental states. And in the Satipatthana, seeing the body as body, seeing feelings as feelings, seeing the mind as minds, mental states as mental states, dhammas as dhammas. And so it's taking out the poison. It's taking out the poison of me and mine, as I say, not through an act of will or faith in the Buddha, but seeing, yes, it's like that. You suddenly, out of the blue, some thought arises. Where does it come from? I don't know. And memories that come to your mind. You think things that you would really like to remember, you can't. They've gone forever. And then you remember some kind of advertising jingle from so it's trivial things stick in the mind. As when I was a boy, we used to drink a lot of milk, and there was the jingle: "Drink a pint of milk a day." Stuck in my mind for 6 years, and the person who wrote that jingle is Salman Rushdie, who became a very famous novelist in later years. But something that rhymes sticks in your mind more than something that doesn't. And so that's just the nature of the brain. So this mind, it's the mind, it's human mind, and it's human, and you see it, and if you're looking at it in the correct way, as I say, you're extracting that venom, that poison of me and mine. Secondly, a sense of community and commonality with other beings starts to, you feel you understand people more easily, and you forgive people more easily. That you think maybe you're just sitting there feeling quite normal, and then suddenly this anger comes up, and perhaps you can let go of it, perhaps you can't. But it's quite shocking just how something like that can just bubble up from below, and you think, yeah, I'm like that. Other people are like that, and as Buddhists committed to abandoning the unwholesome and developing the wholesome, it's difficult. And then you think, what about someone who doesn't even have a concept of abandoning the unwholesome, or has even any idea that these emotions are not who they are? How could one expect them to act in any other way? So this is how the this the boundaries of this this self in every day is constantly being questioned and challenged by direct experience. And this is, and when you study and you learn, this, I guess everybody knows like how trees grow. Do you know how trees grow? You know, what do trees take from the earth through their roots? Water mainly. But how trees grow is that they have chlorophyll, and and sun's rays have electromagnetic radiation, and that combines with the chlorophyll, and that chlorophyll, empowered by the sun's light, breaks down carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, separates it out, takes the carbon and reduces, lets go the oxygen, and then that carbon then is made into glucose, and glucose is made into cellulose and into, I think it's called lignite or something like that. That's what makes wood hard and gives it texture. So you see this huge tree, and that's been created from carbon dioxide. So I walk around in my hermitage, breathing in, breathing out, and all this carbon dioxide is coming out of my nose. And I'm thinking, I wonder how much of that carbon dioxide is being taken in by my trees and being converted into wood, and how much I've contributed to the growth of this forest. Yeah, it's cool thinking. Yeah, cool way of thinking. But to see there's like these boundaries that we have, you know, whether we're looking at or not looking at this like mystically, you know, we're all one, you know, but that how everything constantly interchanging, and just from how wood, something which is so solid, is made out of gas. Sunlight and gas creates wood and trees and all the things that are made out of trees. So it's just having that kind of interest and wonder in the world, and this is Dhamma also, and to the extent that it, as I say, it undermines wrong thinking, and the Dhamma challenges us. It says, it's come and see Dhamma. And the more you look, it takes you on a journey. This is opanayiko. So one of the translations of opanayiko is like leading inwards. But it's one of those words that nobody really knows what it means. It could be opanayiko, but can also mean leading onwards. And I prefer that. It's like if you study an academic subject, it's not necessarily going to change you into a different person. But it might, but it probably won't. But if you study the Dhamma, you won't stay the same. It changes you. It leads you onwards. And so looking in our life and the way that we're relating to the people around us, the way we're living in the world, we're constantly observing and learning and opening our minds, and to, as I say, as you develop the sensitivity to goodness becomes very very apparent. And if we're looking at saying earlier on how difficult it is to come up with some kind of criteria or some kind of measure of whether or not you're developing in practice. So I would say, firstly, the precepts are number one. If you have right view and you have any kind of insight into causality, there's no way you'll break any of the 5 precepts. But other than that, this sensitivity, this awareness, this sense of constantly being enriched and uplifted by everyday goodness, small acts of kindness and goodness. And you can see it's not just a matter of you being uplifted and enriched, but you can contribute as well. I've told this story so many times the past few months, but just to end today, to tell this story as another traveling story. I was living sort of life like a wandering life in the Himalayas. I was again as a teenage boy and sleeping rough, and this is north of Shimla in the Sutlej and up towards Chinese border. And I was walking along one day, and this old couple outside the house, and the old man looked at me and he said like this, sorry, oh, yeah, okay. He's asking me whether I want to have something to eat. Have you eaten yet? This is the universal greeting in rural communities. Have you eaten yet? So I went over and sat down with them, and we had a very simple meal, chapati and dal, and delicious. And then it was getting dark, and the old man said, do you want to sleep here? And I said, okay, thank you. And we went into their house, which was a shack, a one-room shack. And in one corner, there was a few clothes, a few pieces of cloth, no furniture, and then a charpoy, like a rope bed. And I'm thinking where it was, so where am I going to sleep? And they point to the bed, and I said, no, and they insisted, no, you. And so in the end, I did, and I was tired, and I fell asleep, and woke up in the morning. Where am I? And I looked down. I'm in this hut, and there's this old couple curled up side by side on the floor in front of me in this little shack, and I thought I will never forget this kindness, and I haven't, and I thought, on that day, they really felt so happy. You could see they felt they were really rich. And for them, being rich mean they had enough for them to eat and enough left over for a guest. That means rich. They had a place to sleep and a place to offer someone else to sleep. That was their riches. And their kindness and goodness, not a huge thing. I mean, if you think in terms of resources or anything, it wasn't. But it was so genuine and meaningful and memorable. As I say, this is 50 years later. One of my strongest memories of those years of traveling. And you think that when you act kindly, when you do something, just a small thing, doesn't have to be spectacular, a huge financial outlay, just some small genuine act of kindness, you make yourself happy, and the memory of it will stay. I'm sure the memory of it stayed with them for years afterwards. They're probably passed away by now. But also, what greater gift could you give to someone than a memory of altruistic goodness and a proof that people are selfish and calculating and cynical, but we also have this within us, our human beings. There's no question that unthinking and spontaneous goodness and kindness is all around us, and that we have that within us ourselves. And so when people are getting very negative about themselves, and I'm no good, or I'm not good enough, and all those things, they say, have you never done anything kind and good in your life? And are you not capable of doing something kind and good? Well, of course you are. Then how could you be not good enough? So let's see. Talk.
ขอโอกาสครับอันนามยังธรรมกถาสาธุกรังตถามเสสาธุสาธุสาธุอนุโม